This video will serve as an in-depth, objective, rational analysis of the movement known as White Christian Nationalism.
Our golden age has only just begun. We are one people, one family, and one glorious nation under God.
So after years of unrest and national turmoil, mass immigration, rising crime, a good amount of people believe that ethno-nationalism is the solution to saving the society. They argue that it restores community, safety, culture, and values. Now, with all of that sounding very good on paper, one would think that the populace would accept it with open arms. However, the reality is the complete opposite, which is why I'm going to be putting the movement under a microscopic lens and test it to its absolute limit and see how well it holds as a concrete ideology. And by the end of this video, we will determine if white Christian nationalism is, in fact, the answer. Now, the white nationalist movement is very peculiar in the sense that it doesn't have a necessarily defined foundation, because whereas other political movements have defined policies and objectives, the far-right movement is mostly based on claims and speculation, which actually kind of surprised me. Now, as you all know, claims are not objective until they have been proven or disproven. So what we're going to do is analyze each of these claims one by one. One of the core tenets of their ideology is race defines who you are.
Because I don't think that race is just skin deep. I don't think that race is just a construct.
And because of that, anyone who is different needs to leave the country. Race does not define who you are. What society refers to as race is simply just skin pigmentation that adapts to its environment. Cold regions, low melanin. Tropical regions, high melanin. People in tropical regions need high melanin to block excess UV radiation from the sun. Now, if a group of black people moved from a tropical region to a northern region over a long period of time or generations, due to less UV radiation, their skin must adapt to its new environment and therefore change color.
Have you ever wondered why black people have such deep, rich skin tones? And all of them lived in Africa. As they migrated north, their dark skin became a disadvantage. Too little sun meant too little vitamin D. So generation by generation, Shista, their skin began to lighten. They didn't bleach. They adapted slowly, naturally through thousands of years of evolution. So you see, you didn't start white. You became white by leaving home.
To add to this, in early modern Europe, people were usually categorized by their religion, language, locality, lineage. Descriptions of light skin or fair complexion existed, but they weren't a coherent continent-wide category that mapped to modern racial hierarchies. It was only after the Naturalization Act of 1790 that the white identity was used to differentiate between the enslaved Africans. Yes, I am aware of the theory of race realism. Now, apart from the fact that it's been disproven by countless credible scientific sources, the reason it does not work is just because you acknowledge that something is a certain way at a specific point in time does not mean that it is permanent, because what they are doing is the functional equivalent of looking at the sun at a specific point in the sky and saying, ha, I observed the sun at this point in the sky, so that must mean that's where the sun permanently is. I mean, yes, they are partially correct in the sense that humans in certain environments do in fact have different physical features due to their environments. I mean, congrats. But these are all environmental adaptive traits. That definitely does not mean that they are a staple of your being. The most obvious example being the difference between the nostril width of people in humid versus cold environments, because the nose's main job is to warm and humidify the air before it reaches the lungs. So since the air in tropical environments is obviously already humid, that means that the nose can afford to be wider, whereas in colder environments, their noses being narrower helps slow down and humidify the air before it reaches the lungs. Because if their theory on race was true, then you would see people of all different colors: blue, purple, yellow. This is the reason why the only two races on this planet that you see is within a spectrum of black and white. It all depends on how close or far you are from the equator. Also, I've noticed some people in this society categorizing Asian people as yellow. which does not really make any sense because they quite literally share the same color as white people. So there seems to be some confusion going on there. But yeah, black and white, fair complexion, dark complexion, that's it. The notion that race is a permanent feature and defines who you are has officially been disproven. The bell curve argues that IQ is partly heritable and distributed across society in a bell-shaped curve, aka normal distribution. So for some reason, they often present this as if it proves racial differences in intelligence, but the statement itself does not mention race. It just says IQ varies in the population and most people score near the average. So using it to justify racial differences or hierarchies is reading into something that isn't there and quite frankly illogical. Social stratification is increasingly based on cognitive ability rather than class or family background, basically what they call a cognitive elite. Now, if this were true, then the people who argue for this notion would be elites themselves and wouldn't blame their existences on the Jews. Differences in average IQ among racial and ethnic groups help explain some societal inequalities. Again, if this were true, there would not be white people who experience those inequalities by society. A society increasingly divided by cognitive ability could become more unequal and unstable. So the obvious argument here is white smart, brown dumb, so brown need to go back, so society peaceful. The reason this argument does not work, however, is we've seen white societies in the past be unstable and commit the most vile acts of barbarism to themselves and to the women that they claim to care about, with whom they conveniently use to push their narrative. The far right thinks that IQ is fixed because of the bell curve, when the book itself has never said that. The notion that IQ is a permanent feature and is determined by race has officially been disproven. Non-white societies cannot build advanced structures, cities, or civilizations without European influence. The basic argument here is white people invented things and built things, so that means they are smarter. You hear them saying things like they civilized the world because they built structures and, quote, invented the wheel. Now, firstly, white people did not invent the wheel. The wheel was invented in ancient 300 BCE Mesopotamia, the modern day Iraq. Now, the reason people in tropical or humid environments did not build as much or the same structures that you see in northern hemispheres is simply due to the environment. Again, most of the structures in North America were made to account for insulation against the weather. In the past, you had thick walls made from log and sod. In the modern day, you have advanced insulation in walls, thermal breaks, etc. Those same structures aren't built as much in warmer climates because they do not need them as much as people in colder climates do. It's all dependent on where you find yourself and what is conducive to survival. Also, for that argument to work, you would have to ignore the fact that people in warmer climates aren't literally building the structures as we speak. The building argument has officially been disproven. Do Jews control America? There are many reasons why many of them believe this to be true. They've highlighted military aid to Israel, overrepresentation in media, and bank ownership. The main reason above all, however, is censorship, because in their words, they get censored anytime they criticize Jews.
They ruined my life for saying this. They literally ruined my life over this conversation.
And that leads them to believing that Jews control America. But it's way more nuanced than that. Private companies hold the utmost power in terms of censorship. They've chosen to make laws against anti-Semitism for their monetary interests and has nothing to do with the government. The reason why anti-Semitism is taken seriously is due to the sensitive history of Jewish persecution. It doesn't mean that they are better than anyone else or getting special treatment like the alt-right would have you believe. It's the company's personal interests of protecting what they deem to be discriminated groups. The reason why Jews are associated with wealth, power, and elitism is due to a long history of restriction. In Christian medieval Europe, they were barred from owning land and trading resources. The reason they were so restricted is because people blamed them for Jesus' death, which is a separate video on its own. The only thing they could do was money lending. This created the stereotypes that Jews were money hungry, which carried over to the modern age. Now, America does not send military aid to Israel because Jews own America. America does it and has always done it for geopolitical and strategic reasons. They ally with Israel mainly for control of oil in the Middle East. If they didn't, major oil shipping routes like the Strait of Hormuz would be at risk. Prices worldwide would skyrocket, which would destroy the US economy. They reference AIPAC lobbying as evidence of control, but that would only be valid if Israel was the only country allowed to lobby in the US, which is not true. Any country is legally allowed to lobby in America via the First Amendment, including Russia and China. And lastly, representation in media does not equate to a group of people owning a country. The entire Jewish argument could be made for basically any group of people, as Jews aren't the only quote-unquote race who are wealthy in America. If anything, they actually hold a small percentage of the wealth in America. There's black, Indian, Chinese, white, especially white, which makes this argument even more ironic. So we can safely conclude that it's nothing more than emotional speculation. Again, nobody is saying that Jewish people don't hold positions of power in America, but this idea floating around that Jews are always conniving, scheming, and looking for ways to bring down the hardworking, blue-collar, white man is absolutely not a real argument. It's like as if they have nothing better to do with their lives. Now, the irony here is blaming Jews for everything directly mirrors black people blaming white people for all their problems, which they criticize. The notion that Jews own America has officially been disproven. Is America a white nation? America does not belong to anyone, just like land does not belong to anyone. Of course, humans can make laws and certificates declaring ownership, but that does not mean that it actually belongs to you. That's why your house can be reclaimed by the government. The earth belongs to everyone who inhabits it, because by their logic of ownership, they shouldn't have claimed America as their own in the first place. They should have left it to the initial inhabitants, the Aboriginals. Now, their argument for this is they conquered it, but the point still stands. You can come in and take it by force and create your own laws and beliefs, but that does not mean that it is actually yours. The same way laws are created is the same way they can be changed. The notion that America is a white nation has been disproven. Is America a Christian country? So this is basically the exact same argument as the last one, but with some caveats. Swap race with religion. So as said earlier, land does not belong to any group of people. Choosing to label yourself as whatever doesn't give you the right to tell other people to get out of the country. The US was founded on a mix of religious, philosophical, and secular ideas. Early settlers categorized people by religion, language, and locality. The phrase Christian nation is a modern ideological construction in itself. The only reason why the US government decided to add God to the Constitution in the first place was to oppose atheist Russia and gain moral notoriety on the global stage. It's not because they cared about God or Christianity. The US did not belong to any group of people, ever. Laws and governance are civil, not religious. America's identity has always been pluralistic, with multiple religions and cultural influences shaping it. The Constitution separates church and state. Indigenous and non-Christian populations were present before colonization. The Constitution explicitly prohibits a state religion via the First Amendment, so this automatically invalidates this entire claim, except of course you're planning to change the Constitution, which I'm sure you're not.
You're saying you don't care about the Constitution, but actually you do because you quite like the Second Amendment. You just don't like the bits that you disagree with. Can I just be clear on that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I'm more than willing to amend it and include
whenever
the
it's in your
Second Amendment.
favor.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, well, that's a completely different subject. The point is, America was never founded as a Christian nation, so the claim that America was founded as a Christian nation has officially been disproven. Another one of their core arguments, which is used to justify the notion that people they deem lower than them for whatever reason don't belong in the country, is the claim that non-whites are inherently violent, while they, on the other hand, are not violent and are forced to put up with the violence of non-whites. Of course, this could be further from the truth, as your looks, aka race, along with other features, does not equal a proclivity to violence. One of the stats they use to justify their assertion is the famous black 13%, 50% crime stat. The reason they love this stat so much is obviously to inflate the perceived danger of black people in the eyes of the populace, putting themselves in a subconscious saint position in the eyes of the populace. By emphasizing the small 13% figure with the 50%, it creates the impression that a relatively small segment of the population is responsible for a disproportionate share of the nation's crime, which is not only ridiculous, but literally impossible. Like, there is no logical way that's possible. The reason this isn't so is due to concentrated risk. Now, contrary to what people think, crime isn't evenly spread out across the nation. It is highly concentrated to specific areas. These are mostly low-income areas and areas with high gang activity. So since crime reports don't bother limiting the stats to cities and instead report them nationally, it leads to the rest of the population being disproportionately represented. Now, yes, almost all the high-risk cities are majority black, but altogether, it's 2 million black people, which is about 5% of the US black population. And if you look at the amount of black people who live in high crime areas, the numbers drop even lower. Now, to fully understand how easily these national statistics can be miscued, let's say you have two countries, country A and country B. The two countries have two cities each. Now, in each of the cities, there's 8 white people and 2 black people. In the first country, if 10 crimes were committed by the 2 black people in the first city and 10 crimes were committed by the 8 white people in the second city, that means white and black people committed 50% of the crimes each nationally. You see how that works? Whereas if the crime is evenly spread out across both cities, one person a crime, that 50% stat instantly disappears. Now, to add to this, for their whole thing on non-whites being the violent ones and they have to sit there and put up with it to work, whites would literally have to commit 0 crimes, which is not what we see. That alone automatically invalidates that entire argument. And they are, quite frankly, being illogical by assuming that position. Because regardless of how you may personally feel about certain quote-unquote races, that doesn't change the objective reality. And what's even more ironic is the argument that I presented here is an argument in favor of per capita, which is another statistical argument they love. Yet, for some reason, they only acknowledge it when it's in favor of their side. The 13%, 50% argument, along with the notion that non-whites are more violent than whites, has officially been disproven. There are white women were brainwashed by Jews into believing in feminism. This is a very interesting one. Okay, let's look at it like this. If they had this perfect society and their women, in their eyes, were willing to throw that away because somebody told them to, as they say, well then that clearly means they didn't think it was that perfect. And it really begs the question, why are they so interested in creating a society with people who clearly aren't loyal or interested in them?
White women have liberal ideas, but they carry white genes. And so white women have eggs that when fertilized by white men are going to create white babies. And
more importantly, how are they planning to do that? By force? Because, I mean, isn't it supposed to be a two-way thing? Like, if they don't want to participate, then they don't want to participate. Because if they were genuinely interested in participating in that society, then nothing anybody says would ever be able to convince them otherwise. So the point here being, it was a choice. And this is true. Like, this has been confirmed by multiple historians who debunk the myth of the good old times. Because one of the themes that they ride on is this nostalgia fantasy that things were good in the past and they want to get back to that. So what they are basically trying to do is drive society towards a fantasy. The only way this argument works is if they believe women are mindless entities who cannot think for themselves.
Women are fucking retarded, okay?
And since obviously that isn't true, that means that this notion has officially been disproven. One of the core foundations of the movement is the notion that the white race is getting bred out of existence. They refer to it as the Great Replacement. To further effectively tackle this point, it is imperative to understand that everybody, both men and women, are sovereign individuals who have ultimate control over their own autonomies. Nobody came to this world to serve or be a slave to anybody. It is equally as crucial to understand that, unfortunately, the main thing that the people pushing this idea thrive on is control and subjugation of other people. This includes women. This is why they use the word conquered a lot. The most common way they do this is through skin color. The reason why is since the world is still very external based, people subliminally associate white skin with symbolizing purity. Our minds work in symbolism. Obviously, this is easily disproving, as having white skin does not by no means make you a good person. The paradox here is anyone who thinks like that is automatically not pure, as subjugating people based on how they look is not what a person of pure heart and mind would do. Anyway, obviously, women have control over their own anatomies, and the people pushing this idea know this. What they are trying to do, however, is bypass the boundaries of women that they deem their own and force their way into their bodies, using this fantasy that they want everybody to play by. It's the reason why one of the main talking points in the manosphere far-right space is the sexless male crisis.
Go to the club and nobody even fucking talks to them. If they try and talk to a girl, they get blanked and ignored and told to Most men are absolutely and utterly invisible. This is the truth about masculinity, right? Most men don't even exist. They send 10,000 DMs and never even get read, let alone replied to. And that is the reality. As a man, it's player versus player. It's ultimately competitive. And as a man, you have to outcompete the other men who are prepared to get up and do it anyway.
For some reason, they consider not having sex a problem, and they have an obsessive vested interest in solving that problem in any means necessary. The easiest way to accomplish that in their eyes is using this false illusion of race. I mean, it pretty much aligns with the right's well-known obsession with making babies for the sake of making babies.
Young people need to get married, they need to mate, and get a mortgage.
So let me say very simply, I want more babies in the United States of America.
We're going to have more than 7 if we can, basically, until my uterus is forcibly removed in a botched surgery.
I mean, the GOP doesn't want to release the Epstein files, but I'll tell you what, they want to release something, all right? Holy. So in short, the white race isn't getting bred out of existence because you do not own those women in the first place to worry about if their wombs are being bred just because you share the same color with them. There's nothing wrong with family and community, but under false incentives, there is none of that. There is only whatever this stuff is. Also, since it's already been established that quote-unquote race isn't a permanent feature and is 100% determined by evolutionary and environmental factors, that means the quote-unquote white race can actually be bred out of existence. Also, the whole argument of white people being a minority in the global population isn't true. They make up like 9 to 10% of the global population, and even Hispanics make up like 8 to 9%. So when the far right makes that argument, you would think that they are some type of marginalized group and a minority and everybody is miles ahead of them. This notion has officially been disproven. So it would appear that out of all these claims, none of them were based on any substantial logic or objective reality, which is a signal of ulterior motives. But to confirm that, we need to look at the people who are actually making these claims. Now, right now, the only reason it seems like they hold the moral superiority is because they have aliases like protecting women and protecting their society. And we're going to confirm if these are actually true or not. Now, a movement is made up of people. To determine who these people actually are, we need to fully analyze the minds of these people based on their actions. Now, if their focus is on improving society, then the logical objectives would be societal safety and the prosperity of the people. A genuine care for not just themselves, but everyone in their society. These would have to be men of character who practice what they preach. And their objective for society would have to line up with who they are. But the issue here is the people pushing this idea claim that is their overall goal because they're good people, supposedly. But that is the complete opposite of what we see.
I saw a TikTok of this like millennial dad, maybe even a Zoomer, and he was watching Star Wars 3 with his baby son. And he posted it on TikTok. My kid's watching Star Wars with me. And it's like, you are a f***ing geek. You are a nerd. Shouldn't you be like in a factory? Why don't you have any scars? You know, like, shouldn't you be out killing people?
I live in South Carolina. The age of consent here is 16. So I can be attracted to a 16-year-old if I want. And I am. And I'm going to marry a 16-year-old. I have a deal worked out with a guy. He has a daughter who's 14 right now, and when she turns 16, I'm going to marry. We're business partners. I have a whole thing worked out with him. But basically, I'm going to marry his daughter when she turns 16.
Hey, bitch, we control your bodies. Guess what? Guys win again, okay? Men win again. And yes, we control your bodies. It's your body, my choice.
Not enough men are sticking to the age-old ways of masculinity. I believe that me standing up and saying a man must protect the woman and provide for her, so he needs to make sure that she's safe. He needs a degree of authority to protect her. Safe. He needs a degree of authority. Safe. He needs a degree of authority.
And women these days, they're always making faces, and I really just want to blast them in the face. And they contort their faces doing these gesticulations, and I want to grab both their wrists with my hands. And I just want to stop. When women are being retarded, they don't know anything. I'm just so sick of that face they make, and it's like, don't make that face to me. I'll punch you in the face. I'll wipe that stupid face right off your face. You know what I mean? It's like, one, don't look at me like that. A lot of women want to be, but there's like a lot of women that really want a guy to beat the shit out of them. But also, they have to pretend, but part of it is they have to pretend like they don't. Guys like Matt Walsh, his show takes place in a tool shed. You know, guy stuff. But he would never beat the shit out of his wife. You know, but you know that he would never punch his wife in the face. The only profit-making thing that AI does, besides defense, it's going to be porn and sex. And when that happens, women are fucked. When that happens, number one, it's going to be the best thing ever. Number two, women are going to be fucked because everybody's going to prefer it. Then we got to cut their welfare and they'll come crawling back.
Oh, got flag teeth.
This is what's happening. They're chasing him. They're chasing him. They're actually chasing him.
Smack her, smack her.
What do you mean smack her?
What's wrong with you? Why are you coming against us?
Fuck you, bitch. Fuck you, dumb bitch.
$10.
Yeah, and that's what I thought. That's what I thought. Crazy bitch coming on the show. This is just like when I got raped. Shut the fuck up, bitch. This is about Kanye. Asshole. So good. And we're back. And we're back. Confessing that's just like how I got essayed and raped. And I'm like, no. Yeah, of course, typical woman making it about herself. Typical stupid bitch screaming about rape all the time. They're right about you. You're an asshole. Yeah. Put you in your place. Next. You thought.
$10.
Now, of course, their number one justification for most of this is they're just joking.
It's like, hey, dummy, it's a joke.
Which is fair. It could be just jokes. Or it could be actually cop-outs used to deflect criticism. To determine that, we have to understand what actually is a joke. The point of a joke is social bonding and relief from stress. Now, when they are joking, the social bonding aspect here is explicitly amongst themselves, since it includes physical violence and is at the expense of women, the people they are claiming to protect. Which is why the joking thing does not work as a defense. So that would mean that it's just a cop-out. Now, the relief from stress aspect is also important in the sense that it is at the expense of women. That would mean that they see women as an enemy or an entity to be at war with and to be stressed about, whether they know it or not.
But I will say that women are very difficult to be around.
So in short, exclusion equals psychological opposition. Now, we have now determined that they are not interested in protecting anyone as they claim and are not who they say they are. But for this analysis to be complete, we have to now determine their motives. So that begs the question, if they see women as such an inconvenience, why do they want to be around them? Why can't they just live their lives in peace and leave them alone? Well, that's a good question. That is because their ideology isn't about preserving anything as they claim. It is built on war with others and domination over others. The proof of this is very evident. If you genuinely hated someone to the point where you rant about them for hours on end and can't stand being friends with them,
I have no interest in a friendship with females. No offense.
The only logical course of action would be to want absolutely nothing to do with them. Instead, they do the complete opposite.
Sadly, our penance is that we have to get married to white women. It sucks. Mating with white women is an obligation of white people. It's not something we're supposed to look forward to. It's an obligation.
That does not show a mindset of self-preservation in itself. That shows a mindset of seeking conflict.
I honestly want a girlfriend that doesn't know who I am and hates me. And I want a girlfriend that I hate too. I want to hate her and I want her to hate me.
This mindset would explain why even when they had what they considered a ideal ethnic society in the past, they still were not satisfied and felt the need to try and have dominion over other cultures. Because, see, here's the thing. People who are satisfied with their societies would stay in their societies. Because that means if they were to get this fantasy society, they would get bored of it, go out and do the same thing all over again.
Because what I always liked about Trump is this is the language that he would use. When he said about the Iraq war, he said, look, you went in, take the oil. And to the extent that we're in Iraq, who gives a shit whether they vote? Just take their oil. Just have American energy companies come in and let's just take the energy. It's transactional. That's how the world is.
When your ideology is based on superiority, that means you need somebody to be superior to. And even if you try to make the argument that it's about resources,
it's transactional. That's how
they effectively trap themselves in the irony that this society they envision cannot stand on its own. And when you actually sit down for 5 seconds and think about the society that they are trying to go back to, it's not anything special. It's the same old life of industrialism, capitalism, wage slavery, depression, and just monotonous grinding, the same way it is in every capitalist society built on hierarchy. The paradox here is if they actually were satisfied with that society, slavery itself would have never happened in the first place, because they would have never felt the need to even give those jobs to black people. They would have worked those jobs themselves. I mean, isn't that what this dream society they're trying to work towards is all about? You know, grinding and pulling yourself up by the bootstraps. But since people who think like this don't even want to do the jobs that make that society what it is, then we can rationally come to the conclusion that they don't actually care about creating that society. It's not their main goal. Their main goal is feeling powerful.
I am done with these trad feminists. Women get to do whatever the fuck they want, but men have all these obligations. You young men need to shut up and get married and man up. You need to go and work in a factory and live in Ohio. You need to go and work at a nail factory and live in southern Indiana and shut the fuck up and just pay for your wife's stuff and pull her chair out for her and be masculine and work with your hands and be this and be that. Where the man's got to be the man's man, put yourself last, servant leadership, shut up, and you need to really be into your domestic life. Don't be a polygamist and don't do these other things.
Wait a minute. You guys heard that, right? So the society that he supposedly wants to build towards, you know, white men and white women together in their white picket fences in a domesticated trad life where society is safe and men and women love each other and their race is intact. He doesn't even want to participate in that society himself.
And then she's going to want to say, oh, I want a minivan. You can't have your cool ass car. You got to have a gay ass minivan. She's going to say, oh, I don't want to live in Chicago. It's too dangerous. I want to live in a big white farmhouse. She's going to gayify my whole life. She's going to start putting fucking decorative bowls on every table. There's going to no table will be a clear space, just decorative bowls everywhere, decorative fixtures and bowls.
He doesn't want to participate in the life that he's advocating so strongly for. This very idea of the nuclear family and domestication and saving the white race is what his entire movement is built on. This only goes to strengthen the point that they don't actually care about creating that society. Because the simple fact that they wouldn't even practice what they preach would indicate that they are only using this movement as some kind of nihilistic power fantasy, which would explain why even when they had ethnic societies in the past, they would still go out and embark on multiple imperialist ventures throughout history. The mindset here correlates. So someone like the leader of this entire movement, he himself has been known to backtrack a lot.
We had our disagreements. Where we did agree is that he would go to these college campuses and proclaim the name of Jesus Christ. And ultimately, that is why he was killed. The gunmen that killed him, they hated him because of his defense of Christian morality. Charlie Kirk cannot call himself a Christian anymore.
So in one instance, he's a white guy who's the leader of a white movement who wants to, quote unquote, take his country back for white people.
It's our country.
But then in the slightest bit of pressure, he caves and reveals his true identity.
You're saying you're a white supremacist? I'm not a white supremacist. I'm actually a Protestant.
So if you ask his fan base to explain this, they'll probably tell you something like, oh, he's just playing the long-term game. You wouldn't understand. He's just being smart. Playing what game exactly? This is a police officer that was conducting a casual investigation about battery and assault. It's not like he was going to arrest you for saying you were a white nationalist on the internet. And let's just say he did. Either way, it only goes to show that he doesn't stand by his beliefs the way you think he does. Because if he can't handle a simple police encounter, what makes you think he's going to get to the highest levels of government?
He telling other white people, if you feeling sad, come on, let's go laugh at the black people who spending their last money and trying to dress up and look like famous white actors.
This man was recruiting racist haters. He said, if you're blue, don't know what to do, where to go, why don't you go where Harlem Glitz putting on the Ritz? Let's go watch the fronters and pump fakers. That's what he said.
Are you starting to see a pattern yet? I want to remind you that this was a time in American history where black people were literally seen as animals. And yet this man still felt the need to break that societal barrier for nothing more than to relish in the suffering of people that he saw as lesser than him. But what happened to keeping his clean, untainted, no crime, white space as pure as possible? Why did he feel the need to do this, you might ask? It's because the people who think like this are dependent on that feeling of being better than others. It's not about going back to some nostalgia fantasy. Many people think that this movement is something as innocent as returning to a safe society, but it's way deeper than that. It's all a power game. So now that we've figured out their true motives, the last thing we're going to do is determine what exactly they're even going to do if given the power. Now, when we add their ideology of needing sex,
it's like, look, men want to have sex with hundreds of women.
Disregard for anybody but themselves.
Men win again.
A proclivity to violence.
And I just want to stop.
A need for the feeling of dominion and superiority.
And to the extent that we're in Iraq, who gives a shit whether they vote? Just take their oil.
In short, well, there's no easy way to say this. You might want to brace yourself, but their main and final goal is to breed without consent.
White women, come on down to the front. Come on down to the front. Now, I want to caveat what I am about to say, because I'm about to get candid for a minute, to say that this does not apply to all white women. There are a multitude of white women who are on the right side of history. They are down in my comments. They are doing the work. They are deconstructing, voting properly. They are getting out with the activism. They are using their bodies and their minds for good. They are doing what they need to do. But it's the other white women, the taking away of bodily autonomy, that policy 100% targets white women. When RFK Jr. and Dr. Phil got up on that podium and said, we need more babies, do you think they were talking about people like me? If black women started having more babies, they'd be pissed, okay? They're not talking about us. They don't want any more black babies. They want white babies. So whose vajayjays are they going after? yours.
It's your body.
The whole bodily autonomy and choice thing, that's for you. They want to force you, white women, to have children.
My choice.
It ain't for us. If they could force us to not have children, which they have in some cases, especially when it comes to immigrants and being forced to have hysterectomies, they would force us not to have kids. But for you, they will force you even if you are 10 years old and SA.
My choice.
Oh, I bet it is. They are trying to create a society where they can do whatever they want to anyone, and at the word of all accountability.
The problem with libertarianism is that liberty is not the highest political virtue. The highest political virtue is order. Force, guns, overwhelming force, power that comes out of the end of a rifle, and legitimacy. The people have to believe in the authority of the state. And libertarians, they have a little bit too much faith in people and a little bit too much faith in the individual. I don't believe in the individual.
This movement is pretty much a variant of the Manosphere movement. That is why former popular figures in the Manosphere support it so much. All they've done is transfer the energy, effectively amplifying the movement. They have subconsciously replaced the word masculinity with whiteness, which is why nowadays you see this guy everywhere instead of Andrew Tate. I guess he's supposed to be like the new king of the normie internet. Like, if you take somebody like Tate, for example, you'll notice every once in a while he posts all these weird tweets where he shames white men for being too soft on women. It's almost like he's using this sudden culture shift towards race to exercise basic red pill talking points. Because if it was actually about protecting some fantasy pure society, there wouldn't be black people supporting it because they're the evil ones, right? I mean, what would they possibly have to gain from that? Like, thinking about it from a purely logical perspective, it's because it's a male movement. Their hijacked brains think that they would get some type of notoriety and special treatment in this breeding paradise that they're trying to create. My final verdict is white Christian nationalism is not the solution to a sustainable and happy society. It's not the solution to anyone, including the people advocating for it. No system built on superiority and tribalism ever succeeds. It doesn't matter what race. Sure, a decently functioning machine will run for a little while, but depression, loveless marriages, suicide, and many more will always be there. Just because others are doing it doesn't automatically make it right. The more you indulge in a mindset of anger and hatred, the more it takes from you. If you don't change it, the pain and misery will continue the further you indulge it. If the goal is a happy, thriving society and individuals, then I highly recommend you stay as far away from this movement as possible.